Hey guys, this is Trevor with SPH. I'm here with Rory,
Hello, everyone.
and today we're gonna do another off-type video of reviewing on another series that we're fans of.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking over a few different videos. We're going to be talking about the Devil May Cry series, the mainline Devil May Cry series, that is. We decided we'd start out our first episode with a discussion of the original Devil May Cry trilogy, and we'll be getting to 4 and 5 in later videos as well.
Yes.
So, Devil May Cry has a pretty interesting beginning, I think. It was actually originally supposed to be a Resident Evil game. It was supposed to be just like an early concept for RE4, because Hideki Kamiya, who directed it, wanted to bring the series in a more action-oriented direction. And I think when he showed Shinji Mikami the work, it was like, hey, this is what I got for the new Resident Evil series. Mikami was like, no, that's not gonna. That's too different.
They're like, this is too far gone from what Resident Evil is.
Yeah, and which, if you've played both series, it's definitely true. It really is its own thing.
If you play the first one, you will see a lot of noticeable differences between, or not, I guess similarities, I suppose differences between Resident Evil and Devil May Cry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the closest to its original origin. So they decided to then make it its own thing, which was perfect. It actually. So I don't know, Trev, if you had ever played Onimusha Warlords, but this is an old action game.
I've heard of it. I have not played it though.
It's actually, you can actually get it on Steam, but it was actually, the idea for Devil May Cry was inspired by a bug in Onimusha Warlords, which I think made it possible to juggle opponents. Like with a sword, and I think that was the original idea behind the juggling combat of Devil May Cry, was that random bug in that other action game.
Well, in Devil May Cry 1, I believe it's not as easy to air juggle, but in later iterations, I believe that becomes more of a thing.
It definitely does. Yeah. A lot of stuff wasn't in the first game that we have now. So it's one of the reasons for new people to the series. I often don't recommend one straight away because it's been on the dated side.
Yeah, like if I tell them to play it, it'd be purely for the story aspect, as opposed to gameplay aspect.
Oh yeah, definitely. The control, the camera in particular is pretty jarring if you're not used to that.
It has that. Well, if you're a fan of Resident Evil, you will know the fixed camera, third person, locked, you can't move it. It's that annoying camera.
Yeah. It is really tricky to work with at the beginning. But it was also a very difficult game, which I think was definitely intentional. But I actually think, and I was wondering what you think of this, because you've played a lot of really difficult action games. You played obviously basically the whole Soulsborne set, and of course the associated games like Neo. And I've always thought that Devil May Cry did a really good job of managing difficulty, because you could get through it even if you weren't a super skilled player, but they have the ranking system as well, which it gives really skilled players something to strive for beyond just getting through the level.
I think the ranking system is actually a really good feature that was implemented, because like you were saying, you can be not a trash player, but someone who's not as good.
Yeah.
And you can make it through a level, but at the end you're gonna see D rank or C rank or B rank. But the better players like Don Gurren, people like that are gonna strive for triple S and S rate and all that.
Exactly, which is not easy.
It's not.
There's quite a lot of difficulty, actually.
Although, quick note, in the first game, I believe the only thing that matters for rankings is speed. So combos don't matter. I'm pretty sure as long as you get the mission done within a fast time, you'll get an S rank.
Yeah, I know mission speed featured really heavily, because I can't remember what mission mission it was, but there was one mission in particular I'm thinking of. That mission speed matters a lot, and that's interesting. I didn't know the exact relationship, but you're saying it's mostly a speed thing.
Yes, because I think it was still showing it's like Resident Evil runes, where like the quicker you did it, I think that's how it works in Resident Evil anyway. Is the quicker that you get through the mission or level, it's the better rank you have.
I'm glad they fixed it to segment it off into different factors, like where time is still a factor, but not as important a one.
Yes, it's I believe in 3 and beyond, it's broken up into time, orbs gained, combo style, and if you used anything like items or...
Yeah, items used, yeah. And so fewer items was a higher rank. So if you didn't use any items, you get your little S for items used. Because because if you use more items, it was...
Yeah,
easy.
That's the less skilled people were talking about, where like you can get through it, but you're gonna see that result as a after effect of using like 4 or 5 items.
And I don't think there's anything in particular left to be said about 1, other than that it was, it spawned follow-ups.
Yes, and it had one of the best memes in it ever, when Dante's at the end of the game and he says, I should have filled your dark soul with light.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
So, Devil May Cry 2, it's a deep emotional roller coaster of the series.
Yeah, Devil May Cry 2 did not have the same director. Kamiya was not back to work on it again, and it actually, we actually don't know who the original director of Devil May Cry 2 was, because unfortunately, like very shortly before the project finished, Hideki Utsuno was brought to work on the project, and he could not fix it. It was too late, it was too far in development, and it ended up being a game that not a lot of people were pleased with. And actually, Hideki Kamiya has clarified that it's not Itsuno's fault that game was bad. That was just like how it went. And so that was like kind of a sad story for him, because he was pulled off of working on Dragon's Dogma for that, actually.
Oh, was he really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was on Dragon's Dogma, or the game that would become Dragon's Dogma at least. And they asked him, said, we're having trouble with DMC2, do you have anybody? And he said, no, everyone's busy. And they were like, sweet, you get to do it. What? So,
that is not something you want to throw upon somebody in the middle of another project.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And he had mostly done, before that, he had worked on Street Fighter and stuff like that. And so that it was, of course, a very different project. So I kind of feel bad for him that it was... Now, it's actually... The interesting thing, I think, about this one is that I don't know anyone who likes it. Like, literally nobody.
Yeah, that's the... So, the common comparison I used to see, since I used to watch a lot of, like, Souls community streams, was that when people would often switch to Devil May Cry, they were told, just skip 2, because DMC 2 is the equivalent of Dark Souls 2, which is like the one that is the different, like the black sheep in the Dark Souls series. It usually follows the same reputation, like it's bad, it's made by different people, nobody played it, like... Yeah. Although I think there are some people who actually like it, but like it's on the very minuscule side of like people liking to...
Yeah, definitely. It still did well, and it did well enough to spawn a sequel, which I think is safe to say we're all happy about.
I think the only thing 2 was good for, Devil May Cry 2 was good for, is that it motivated the guy who made 2 to like not want to be remembered as the guy who made 2, so he made 3 the best game it could possibly be.
Yeah, it was. I really do feel genuinely bad for him that his name will be associated with 2. But yeah, thankfully, as we're gonna talk about, Devil May Cry 3 really turned things around. So that brings us to Devil May Cry 3, which I think is probably one of the best PS2 games, I think.
Yes. I wouldn't even go to say that it was one of the best games of like that decade, because
yeah, me too, actually.
we often say to each other that if they release DMC 3 now with like updated graphics and like the way they treat Resident Evil games when they're remade, I would not feel ripped off if I spent $60.
Yeah, no, me too. I think Devil May Cry 3 deserves the Resident Evil treatment, because I think we've seen that with, like, especially with the RE2 remake, that it's gotten a lot of new fans into the series. Like, we have friends who didn't play RE and now play RE because of it. And I would love to see that happen with Devil May Cry 3, which is so, just to reiterate, it's the same director as Devil May Cry 2, except this time he got to work on the whole thing, and he's been working on the series ever since. So there's a lot with Devil May Cry 3. What are some of your favorite standout things that were introduced in Devil May Cry 3 that we didn't have before?
I think just like the kind of redesign of the whole game in general. Obviously, as someone who didn't play 2 and has only played 1, it felt more like its own entity as opposed to, oh, this is a Resident Evil, like, I don't know, like fluke, fail, and
Yeah.
I don't know like the correct term to say, but it felt more like its own like iteration as opposed to like trying to be something else. And then I like how they implemented combat, and then they ended up adding all the different things for grading system, like we mentioned earlier, how like combos now affected it, stylish points affected it, orbs. It gave you more satisfaction to do better when you got that like S rating or even an A rating, because it's like that means you did this, and the game's out, you were good at it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely, this is the game that like gets started on its difficulty pretty quick. Like, if you don't know anything about Devil May Cry, so like, this is not a spoiler for the game, but the first little boss you face, Vanguard, the Reaper,
Yes.
like, that will be hard if you don't know how to do the things they teach you at the beginning. Like, if you don't know how to correctly play, you will get beaten by that boss.
Side note here, I believe I read an article saying that when DMC 3 originally released, the only complaint that people had about it was that it was too difficult, which is wild, because nowadays that's like a standard where it's like, oh, if it's difficult, people are like, oh yeah, this is great, like this is super difficult, it was an amazing game. Like, they often do that with Dark Souls and such, where they always get the comparison, oh, this is kind of like Dark Souls, this, like, it's a hard game, yada yada yada, but like this game in like 2008 or whatever was frowned upon for being a difficult game.
It feels like it feels like it was the fan base wasn't as unified on what they like back then. It feels like there was. I also feel like back then we didn't have a lot of the subgenres of games we have now. So like now it's a lot easier to recommend games to people that are like Devil May Cry, like other like similar like character action games. But I don't think people were really talking about that back then. Back then it was just action games, and some of them were like Devil May Cry, and some of them were unrelated to Devil May Cry.
Yes, that's also true. Like, you go from like one game to another, and it's like they're not really the same, but because they're labeled action games, people group them together like action games.
Yeah, exactly. Which is one of the reasons why I like that we have, even though some people find subgenres to be a little silly, I like that we have them because it helps fans find like other similar things. What did you think? So, we're talking about Devil May Cry 3. I know neither of us are huge on like story in games, but I think the story of this game has to be mentioned. Like, what did you think of it when playing it for the first time and seeing all the cinematics?
I actually love the cinematics. So, on one of my streams I did way back in the day when I was still streaming from PS4, I streamed 3, and I told everybody in the chat that like, I know this game's entire like script by heart, and they didn't believe me until I started doing the lines before the characters would do the lines. So like this game is actually like I think it was my favorite game on PS2.
It was definitely one of mine. I mean, PS2 and that's a testament.
That's saying a lot. Yeah, PS2 was a long time.
Arguably, like, you could really make a strong case that was the best generation of console game. Like I would definitely hear arguments to that effect. I think like there was a ton of games, and yeah, that one really stood out. And I think the thing about that game too is like it had really fun villains. Like that's the thing I really remember about DMC3 is like the bad guys were fun.
Yeah, like I thought the important aspects were there. Like the fighting didn't feel stale. There was enough of a variety of enemies that kept it fresh.
Yeah. The
cinematics were cool, goofy, hilarious. Story was there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't like an Oscar-worthy story, but like it was a decent enough story to where I got like invested.
There were surprises. There were times in that I think where I was genuinely surprised by what happened. Which is impressive for like an action game.
So now I ask the question: DMC movie when?
Yeah, really. And another thing I think we got to say about DMC3 is the weapons were awesome.
Yes. So for those who don't know anything about DMC, the weapon progression is not like a lot of other games, where it's you start with one and you can upgrade that one, and then after you beat bosses, you can gain their weapons.
Yeah.
But it's not the same way you do it in Dark Souls, because in Dark Souls you take their soul and then like you trade it out at like a shop. In this one, it's like immediately after you get their power.
Yeah, absolutely. And I genuinely feel like Agni and Rudra are like iconic.
Yes.
Like
I believe my favorite from the third game was Beowulf.
Okay. Yeah. Good choice.
But yeah, I mean Beowulf was stupidly broken, so that might be why. Like.
The bosses, the weapons, like the bosses that you fought to get the weapons were not that all of them were incredible or anything, but they were still fun.
Yeah, they were all unique in their own way. They didn't feel like carbon cut and copied and like, oh, this boss is this, but like instead of this element, it's this element. It's like no, they all felt unique and had a different feel to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Every boss was nothing felt repeated or anything like that. And so I think with the story was perfect, the combat was perfect.
One thing we should mention though is that this game actually introduces something that wasn't in previous games, and that's the styles.
Yes. Oh yes, that's right. Yeah. So Dante fights in different styles. So just introduce the styles and.
So for most games, like. So say, since we're talking about action games, if you pick a Souls game or something, you have different start, like, stats. Like, you have Pyromancer, which is, like, a casting class, and you have the Mercenary, which is, like, dual-wielding class, and you have the Standard Knight, which is, like, one arm, one shield class. In this, we have styles, which are Gunslinger, Trickster, Swordmaster, and Royal Guard. Those are the ones available at the beginning.
That's right. Yeah.
They all do different things. So Gunmaster is obviously going to be focusing on your guns and shooting. Swordmaster is obviously going to add more moves and techniques with your melee weapons. Trickster is going to add to your mobility, and then Royal Guard is going to be basically just defense.
And they're all like, it's one of the. It's actually a good choice in video games too, because you can choose any and they're all viable.
Yes.
Because there are games that give you choices, but you can tell they were designed for you to make one of those choices, and this isn't one of those games. Like there are great players of the series who are Royal Guard players. There are great players who are Swordmaster players. I want to say you're actually a Swordmaster player. Am I right about that?
Yes, primarily I use Swordmaster or Trickster.
Yes, yeah, and I'm a Trickster player. Yeah, and you know, it's cool to see that you can play the game at a high level no matter what you pick. So it actually does give you some true freedom.
And it also opens up another like level and layer of difficulty, because like say you're struggling on a boss with like say you're using Gunslinger, you could go back and switch styles and be like, well, this might work better. Like say you went from Gunslinger to Trickster, now you have those extra mobility and dodges. It's like, oh, okay,
yeah.
Now I can do this and attack and get out, and it's all adding layers of difficulty, because it's like, will this work? Will this not work? Which is better? Is Royal Guard better? Is Trickster better? Is Gunslinger? Swordmaster?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a layer of difficulty, and I think it's also a layer of replayability too.
Yes, that's true.
Like, it's fun to play a game, you know, if you're like me, maybe you're a Trickster player, and then you're like, oh, but you know, I saw this YouTube video on this guy, he's great, and he plays Royal Guard, you know, and so now I want to go and play Royal Guard and see if I enjoy playing like that.
We should mention Devil May Cry 3 had like, I think it was what, 7 or 8 difficulties?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So there was more than enough playthroughs to like use every single one for, like, you use one for a single playthrough and then like mix it up every single mission.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's like, as you know, I play a lot of stealth games, and one of the things about stealth games is that a big part of the point is that, you know, when you replay it, you pick different abilities and different difficulty, or do challenge runs and stuff. And I think that the same thing can be said for action games. People may like look on the internet and be like, oh, how long is Devil May Cry 3, right? And they're gonna find out how long it is, but that's not really how long it is. That's how long the story is.
Yes.
But you know, you can beat the story.
Yeah, like that's for like the average player. That's not for like the people who want to get, like, that's not like they're saying, oh, Devil May Cry 3 is, let's say, 30 hours. This is an average player. But like if you told Don Gurry like how long did it take you to beat this game, you'd be like, oh, that took me like 5 hours, and it's like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can sink more into it. So don't fall into the trap of thinking because these games are like linear and on the shorter side that you can only get, you know, 30 hours for your money, because you can sink a lot more than 30 hours into these games.
So the story of DMC, do you want to like kind of summarize what's told at the beginning of every single DMC?
Well, I'll say that the way the most of the original DMCs are phrased, I guess, or well, especially the way DMC 3 is phrased, it's phrased as a you have Dante, who's this sort of, you know, confident, rather brash character, and he has an interesting sort of Genesis story where he's the son of a demon and a human, and we learn more about him and about his family as we proceed through the series. And the DMC3, what we're talking about is it's phrased as a conflict between two brothers, which is mentioned at the very beginning.
Yes. So, another quick note is that DMC1, even though it's DMC1, does not take place before DMC3. In like a strictly canon perspective, DMC3 is the prequel to DMC1. It's really confusing, but like, don't play them in like a number order and expect it to make sense.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah.
I believe the correct order is 3, 1, 4, 2, 5.
So that's if you want the story. That's if you're going for the story, yes.
Yes, the story is 3, 1, 4, 2, 5.
So it's worth noting that course, we actually mentioned that we often recommend people don't play 2 and start with 3, and that's not because of the story, that's because of the gameplay. So you can, if you don't want to go back and play 1 because you feel it's too dated, you're actually going to be kind of fine going into DMC 3.
Yes, because DMC 3 and onward are all very similar in mechanics and gameplay. One is the only one that's like kind of far out there. So
and the yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna mention that the good thing about 3 is that it expands so much more on the universe of Devil May Cry.
Yes, absolutely.
Because in the first one they tell the story of like Sparta, and like that's Dante's father, who's like the demon general who rose above justice and turned on all the other demons and like liberated the human world or whatever. That's told at like
from a demon reign, I think is what they say in the game.
That's literally like the beginning of every single old DMC. Is like,
yeah.
If you don't have that ingrained in your mind, then you're not playing it enough.
yeah.
But yeah, 3 really opened up and like made the characters more than like one-dimensional characters. So like 3 expanded on all the foundations and like what was there, and it really like, I think 3 really complements 1 well.
Yeah, I agree.
While still being better than 1.
Definitely. And I think the other thing 3 does is it gives a much better sense of the other characters in the world, because as much as you're playing as one character at a time, right? And everybody thinks of Devil May Cry, they think of the main playable characters. There are other characters in the world who do have stories, there are other characters discussed in certainly DMC's 1 and 2, but 3 does a really good job of introducing the other characters in the universe that it talks about.
Yes, because in DMC 1, it's actually like, I think there's like maybe 3 characters in total.
Yeah,
and then
it's pretty light. Yeah.
In DMC 3, they add like, I think there's like maybe 6 or 7, and it's like, whoa, it's like, where did all these people come from? But they do a good job of explaining who was who and like how they got there and how it all connects.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a very stylish game. So the characters are introduced with a lot of sort of
finesse and like, yeah. It's kind of like Fast and Furious, like crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
They have their own showmanship and everything about them.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no, they. One of the things I like about DMC is that no character feels out of place in the universe.
I would agree with that.
It's kind of weird sometimes to think about, because you would think with a character who's so like, cocky and confident as Dante is, that other characters would feel kind of mild and boring, but they don't. Like, they're introduced as having a lot of personality, even if they're just villains, right?
Yeah, which is what I think they did a really good job with as well. The villains of the Devil May Cry series are actually like not the stereotypical mustache twirling villains and like, oh, I just want to do this because it's like, end of the world and all that. They actually do a good job at adding depth and like reasons on why they're doing what they're doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then another thing that we were going to mention is that DMC3 is actually one of the first early games that actually had a different version of it come out. So there was originally DMC3 Dante's Awakening, and then there was DMC3 the Special Edition.
Yes.
And what the Special Edition did was it added a bunch of content, and then it let you play as the villain.
Which is what ended up being a great feature.
Yes, because he was one of the most like beloved characters of the series. After that, like, he was actually my favorite character. It's
Good choice.
the main protagonist's brother, his twin brother, is the villain.
Yeah, and he does a really good job. And it is honestly, visually, probably one of the best designed villains I can ever remember. Because, like, you may think being a twin, it would just sort of, like, the character wouldn't look very different. They made him look different. They, like, styled him in such a way that he has his own iconic design.
Yeah. They really added depth and made sure that he was his own person, not just, the clone of this person, but, instead of being good, he's evil.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Which is, and I think the ultimate, like, respect, the respect that they have for Virgil is shown in that they made him a playable character.
Yes.
Like, that's how cool he was.
And then, we'll mention this when we talk about the later games, but he comes back in, like, fashion and, like, as playable characters and stuff, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, this is going to be kind of like spoiler-esque. So if you haven't played DMC 3, you should A, beat it before you watch, or secondly, not care about spoilers for a game that's like 20 years old. So, people have often stated that Devil May Cry has done the perfect job at nailing the the perfect antagonist. Because, as we mentioned earlier, Dante and Virgil are brothers, and Dante is on the side of humans and living and not wanting to, open hell to all of the world. Virgil, on the other hand, is the opposite. He's with the demons, he hates his human side. He wants to be the new ruler of hell on Earth. You would think it's just black and white, where, like, two forces clashing. But no. There was this theory I saw, and I don't remember what channel it was, but I think the title was, like, Virgil's sympathy or Virgil's caring or something.
Yeah.
They explained that Virgil actually was not super evil as, like, he came off as, because there are key moments in the story that I'll break down and then point out, like, the things that happened or, like, events that transpired that, like, may have more than just the original meaning to it. So the first time you fight Virgil is on the Tower of Temin Negru, or however you pronounce it.
Yeah, it's like 3 different hyphenated words.
It's like 3 hyphenated words. I don't know how to say it. You find him on the top of the tower, and then Dante loses. Virgil takes Dante's sword and starts walking away, and then because Dante is half demon, he hasn't died or getting stabbed, so.
Yeah.
He picks up the sword, and then as Dante starts getting back up, Virgil runs him through with his own sword. And then he walks away, and then it zooms in on Dante's sword Rebellion, which has the handles from the skeleton closed. Then you see them flash open, and then the sword kind of erupts from his, like, sternum where he got stabbed. That's signifying that he now has Devil Trigger, which is a feature that if you had the special edition for Devil May Cry 3, you would notice that if you played Dante, in the beginning of the game, he does not have access to Devil Trigger up until that point. But if you played as Virgil, you realize that Virgil has access to Devil Trigger from the very beginning.
That's right.
There's this other novel that explains, like, the backstory to Virgil that, like, I read all of. It was amazing. It was like a 35 chapter novel or whatever. In that, basically, they explain that Virgil got stabbed with his own sword, and that's how he had Devil Trigger, but this was at a much younger age, so that's why Virgil has access to Double Trigger before in Dante, and then like in the game you can see it. But it also gives him that key knowledge that that's how you activate Double Trigger the first time. So Virgil picking up the sword of Dante, the Rebellion, and running him through with it, that may or may not have been a way to help his brother as opposed to just like try to kill him.
Yeah.
Like on the surface that may be what it seems like. It's like, oh, he's just like trying to kill him with his own sword. But there may be an underlying message where it's like, oh, he's clearly not strong enough. If I were to raise hell on earth, let me give him that extra boost.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's a really good point, actually, and that was not actually a theory I'd heard before.
Yeah.
But it would make a certain amount of sense, actually. It's like not implausible.
Yeah, it's cause like if you've played the games or if you know anything about the character, you know that Virgil's like calm, cool, collected, and calculated. So he thinks about everything through. And then so the next point in the like theory is that Virgil shows up at his fight with shows up at Dante's fight with Arkham, who's like the other main villain.
Yeah, in some ways, he's the really evil villain of the story.
Yeah, he's like the standard, typical villain.
Yeah.
He's not a complex villain. He's more of just like the standard bad guy.
Yeah.
He shows up and ends up actually helping out Dante with the fight against Arkham. So they team up, and then you see that they get along very well. Like everyone assumes that they hated each other, but like at some point in their childhood they were close. Because they even mentioned it's a famous like catchphrase. It's like the catchphrase is jackpot, and you know that they're close because Dante looks at Virgil and is like, do you remember what we used to say? So then they go into that transition and they go jackpot, and that's how they defeat Arkham. But for once Virgil didn't try to like screw over Dante or anything. His sole goal was to help him, so then that he could eliminate the presence of evil.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, and sort of, it's really telling for Arkham because literally everybody in that story wants to kill him.
Yes.
No, literally nobody likes Arkham.
But yeah, like because Virgil is like a far superior, like skilled swordsman than Dante, he could have waited till Dante was like out of the way and like Arkham was in a weakened state and then come in for the kill, but he chose to interrupt the fight and help Dante, so then that, who knows, like maybe if he kept going, Dante would have died or got like taken control of, or and many other possibilities. But yeah, so that's the next like point of talking that I remember from the video. And then the final one is that in the last fight, which is mission 20, that whole mission is just Dante versus Virgil, and it's actually like the scene I know the most. So like I always quote that from memory randomly.
Yeah.
But yeah, in that scene, once you beat Virgil realizes that he's not gonna win this fight, and instead of like trying to go back with Dante, he stays behind the demon world because the portal had been open for quite some time, and like he was like he would only try to open it again if he went back.
Yeah.
So he wanted to save him that like pain of like knowing that he'd come back and like he wasn't gonna change. And then he like falls in the demon world, and then Dante reaches out for him, and he like cuts his glove, and he's just like, no. He's like, essentially, like I think the metaphor here is that like when he falls into the demon world, like it's too late for him.
Yeah.
So like he like goes down, and then it's essentially like him descending to hell and Dante ascending back to heaven, because he's going back up to the actual world. Virgil's going down into the actual demon world. But yeah, so like that scene was signifying that like he's accepted that he's gonna be there. He accepted his fate. He prepped Dante, because at the end of the third game, Dante is able to beat Virgil, in which the first two encounters the first encounter he lost, the second one got interrupted, but the third one he beats him.
Yeah, sorry, I want to mention, as much as we said that the boss fights weren't like carbon copies of each other, that doesn't mean there's not repeated bosses.
Yeah. But each Virgil encounter is different than the last one.
Yes,
so
exactly. Yeah,
it's fresh enough to the point where it's like, oh, okay, this is fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so through the course of those 3 fights, he goes from being the better swordsman to, I guess, being like on even footing, and then to losing.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So then, in his mind, he's like, okay, I've prepared Dante for whatever is to come, because obviously Virgil wasn't able to handle anything on his own beforehand, and he was better than Dante. So once it was kind of like only the student can defeat the master kind of thing, where it's like if you beat your master, then you're gonna progress better, and so that's the whole theory. Is like he was prepping him to make sure that he'd be safe and protected from anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a really interesting theory, and it actually parses pretty well, to be honest. And it's a really good, like, regardless of the theory or not, I will say that the Dante Virgil story is actually really well done.
Quick thing to mention. The whole start of this theory happened because of that line Virgil said when the first time he stabs Dante. I believe the quote is specifically, "Foolishness, Dante, might controls everything, and without it, you cannot protect anything, let alone yourself."
Without strength, you cannot protect anything, I think is the...
Yeah, and I think he goes, "Without it, you cannot protect anything, let alone yourself," and then like...
Yeah.
That kind of signifies, because in the novel of like Virgil Earlier Life, there's an encounter with him and like the demons who invade his home, and like they murder his mother. So then he failed to protect her, and people are theorizing that's why he says that, because it's like, if I had the strength back then, our mother would still be alive, and then...
Yeah.
So he doesn't want to see that happen again to someone he like cares about.
Yeah, that's really good. Virgil is a really good. He's one of the better. I'll say. Well, we'll not say villain in light of we'll say antagonist.
Yes.
He's like he's one of the best action game antagonists for sure.
He's one of the most complex and like not just surface level. Like, oh, I'm evil. I'm here to do this because it's evil. It's like there's much more depth.
You understand like that he has motivations.
Yes.
Like. Even if you don't follow the story down too deeply. Yeah, that's really... Thank you for sharing that theory. Actually, I really like that.
Yeah, no worries. If I actually find the video, I'll send it to you, and then
Yeah. So now, I guess in conclusion, obviously we spent a while talking about DMC3 and how amazing we think it is, and given the troubled history of 2 and the sort of like 1 is a great game and it's a pioneer and all that, but it was the first one. I'd have to say that if you were to go back and play the series, that 3 has to be sort of your first stop.
Yeah, I would agree. Like obviously you can play 1. If you're all about story, go ahead and play 1 because it is important.
Yeah, it's true.
But I wouldn't start with 3 and then go to 1. I would play 1 first and then play 3.
Yeah, if you really are invested in the story.
Yes.
Like if you really want to know about everything and stuff like that, or if you're like experienced at like PS2 era games and you don't mind some sort of antiquated gameplay mechanics.
Yeah, if you're like a fan of the older RE games, then by all means you should be fine with the first game.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you're a fan of old RE, then you'll definitely have the patience for Devil May Cry 1. So we're gonna do, this is like we said at the beginning, this is the first video in a series about the Devil May Cry franchise. So we're gonna be doing our next video on Devil May Cry 4.
And then after that we're gonna do 5, naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
We won't be touching on DMC, the Ninja Theory one.
We will not.
But just the Capcom ones.
Yeah. We're sticking with our the Capcom ones for the couple teams that we're developing that. So apologies to any really hardcore DMC fans.
Which I can't imagine are too many, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking very much forward to our Devil May Cry 4 video, because what I will say about that is I think it's one of the coolest games ever.
Yes, it's one of the most stylish games ever, too.
Definitely. Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, and if we got anyone in here to start playing DMC, then you're welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this is just this sort of content is just part of what we do. The main thing that we do is the weekly podcast, live on Twitch and posted here right after on YouTube.
Yes. And then occasionally we'll do other series where we take somebody who knows nothing about a game and try to teach them in order to, be competent at that game. We did that with the Yu-Gi-Oh series. And we'll try to have another series like that soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, until then, see you guys later.
Take it easier.